Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are excited for today's show. We are having our monthly check-in with Colorado Workforce Development Council. I have Lee Wheeler-Berliner, Director of CWDC, with me. How are you doing?
Doing great, Alex. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, we have a monthly check-in with you guys. You have had a lot going on these last few months, and I'm sure that April is no different for you.
Absolutely. It's been, closing out winter, heading into spring. We've had a lot of activity as people throughout the state are thinking about the summer and what does that mean for summer employment, summer jobs, and also with the seasonal employment we have, just a lot of hiring. So we've seen a lot of hiring fairs happening around the state.
Yeah.
One of the things we're really looking forward to right now is looking ahead to an event happening in May when we are going to be a part of the Western Pathways Conference. And this is a really neat event out in Oregon, which is going to be bringing together governors, education leaders, workforce leaders from across the country to really dig into how we build quality career pathways and ensure that the work we're doing for Coloradans across the state is setting people on a first step of a journey or a fourth step or eighth step, but ensuring they have a strong pathway that can lead to self-sufficiency and meaningful employment. Yes,
which is what you guys are all about, meaningful employment on both ends, right? For employers and those potential employees.
Absolutely.
Yes. Funnily enough, Western Pathways Conference, we are a partner of that as well, Colorado Business Roundtable. So we fully support your efforts at the Western Pathways Conference in Oregon this year. So you always bring me wonderful guests. So I'm sure today's guests are no less than any of the others you brought me in the past. So go ahead and introduce us to who we have in studio and by phone today.
Indeed. As our regular listeners know, the CWDC is all about collaboration. And so I'm pleased to bring together three heads of state, if you will, the executive directors of several state agencies. So today we have Joe Barela, who's the executive director of the Department of Labor and Employment. And we have Dr. Angie Paccione from the Department of Higher Education. And joining on the phone is Betsy Markey from the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Good morning.
Yes, we're happy to have you. Speaking of Department of Higher Education, we're very excited. Actually, next week on the 11th, we are having our second annual State of Higher Education Forum. So we are having presidents and chancellors from universities all over Colorado. We've got MSU Denver there. We actually have the Colorado Community College System joining in on the conversation this time. We have somebody from Colorado Department of Higher Ed joining us. You are joining us. That's what I thought I was. I wanted to make sure. I didn't have my cheat sheet in front of me, so sorry about that. But yes, we're very excited for that. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us specifically for a longer form show.
Sure.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Alex, we're excited today to really have a theme of how does government work with businesses and the private sector to really ensure that we're driving economic vitality. And so all these organizations have a different role in that. Love to start with just a little summary and introduction. Joe, if you could start and tell us just a little bit about what the Department of Labor and Employment does and who you serve.
Thank you, Lee. And, the Department of Labor and Employment plays a critical role in making sure that Colorado has a skilled workforce. And so we really serve two customers, business and industry, to make sure that they have availability of a talent pipeline, but also job seekers so that there's a strategy and information to help them make connections for careers that lead to livable wage jobs in Colorado. And so primarily our role on the council is to make sure that we're serving both those interests.
Awesome.
Fantastic. And Angie, how about the Department of Higher Education?
So the department, of course, advocates for students, for their families, and also we advocate for the colleges and universities as well. So we try to make sure that we collaborate across many of the different agencies because we're all trying to make sure that the students are prepared for the workforce and that they enter college prepared for college. So they are equipped when they leave there with the skills and talent that they need to really successfully enter the workforce.
Okay, great. And Betsy, we'll go to you. Tell us a little bit about the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, and who is it that you serve?
Yes. Hi. Well, we work with statewide partners to create a positive business climate that encourages economic development and sustainable job growth. We hope to advance the state's economy through, we have various financial and technical assistance available in support of local and regional economic development activities throughout Colorado. And we also, of course, work to increase quality job creation by expanding and attracting businesses, supporting entrepreneurs and small businesses, and maintaining our diverse economic base by retaining existing jobs through programs and a supportive business climate.
Okay, fantastic. And so, Betsy, let's stay with you for a moment. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role with the Colorado Workforce Development Council and how economic development plays in?
Yes. So this is a great group that collaborates well, and I think we work closely both with with Angie and her team at the Department of Higher Education, of course Joe with workforce and labor. And I think, one of the things that we bring, the voice that we bring to the Development Council is an industry talent needs perspective. We hear a lot from businesses throughout the state on what are the jobs that they are looking to fill. So, again, collaborating with groups across the state to make sure that, students are and workers are prepared for the jobs of the future.
Perfect. And that industry voice is so valuable. As we talk about, Alex, and we believe in having a demand-driven system that is really led by the voice of industry. So Betsy and her team are critical partners in that work. Joe, you mentioned this a little bit in your summary, but can you expand a little bit more on your role with the CWDC?
Sure. I think what we try to do is to make sure that, the human capital that is available in Colorado, and we all know that Colorado is fortunate because we import a lot of our human talent, our skilled workforce, but we want to make sure that we're relevant and we're listening to what business and industry, both current industries but even future industries, are looking for with competencies and skills. And that's where I think we need to be connected and be at the same table with higher education and with economic development so that there's not a mismatch. And so we want to make sure that we can give parents and students at the early end of their maybe education and workforce life some good information about what the future will look like. For our mid-career professionals, we want to make sure that there's a connection between the industries that are in their communities, have opportunities for upskilling and really looking how they can stay competitive in those careers or occupations, or if not, what are options for looking at other careers or occupations that they need to transfer to. And so I think we really represent the work life cycle of the human capital in Colorado, and so it needs to be connected to all those players that are part of the council. And so I think it's a forum for us to do that collectively and to all move in synergy, reduce duplication, be more effective and efficient in what we do as government, but really trying to move the needle on how business and industry and other partners are doing the same work we do.
Can I ask you to define mid-career?
Mid-career to me would be people who are probably, have some type of education beyond high school, maybe not a four-year degree or possibly a four-year degree, but have never done anything else in their career. And so there's possibility because of automation and digitalization that they could be obsolete. And so what are they doing to upskill to work alongside technology, or if technology is eliminating their jobs, that they're aware of, hey, I better start looking for something else, and what's a good transferability for me to do if I know my job, perhaps maybe, we know automation will first impact those routine jobs, algorithms where we place a lot of positions that we have humans in that role now. And so how do we make sure that the skill sets they have can be transferred to other industries that are growing, or upskill so they can work alongside that technology?
I would assume that's a fairly recent definition that we've had to put in.
Yes, I think a lot of people still are under the impression that, education is one and done. And so if I finish high school, if I finish college, if I finish an associate's degree, I'm done. And so what we want to do as part of the council is, the lifelong learning and how that's so important, that upskilling is going to be something that needs to be consistent through your work life. And we know work life is being extended beyond 55, 60, 65, 70, 75. And so that upskilling and intervention with education is going to be so critical.
Right.
Yes.
An analogy I heard recently is that for a long time in the United States, we've viewed education and then your career almost like you're going on a road trip. And you fill up the gas tank to full at the beginning, you get your education when you're young, and then you just drive till it's empty. And the reality is, over the course of a long career, you've got to stop and refill that gas tank. You've got to top it off. You've got to change out the oil and things like that. So, Angie, with your role with higher education, how do you tie into the CWDC? And then also expound upon what you're really focused on. What are some key initiatives in your organization this year?
Yeah, thank you. We are on the supply side of all of this. We are the ones who really, help to activate the potential that exists in our students and try to make sure that they choose the right pathway. And even if they choose a different different pathway, that they can come back and choose another one, as you said. So that road that you're talking about, filling up your gas tank, that road has lots of exits and entrance ramps. And so we want to make sure that students are really prepared so that they can really maximize their earning potential. And so some students might want to go a technical route, and we have career technical education. We also have the 2-year community colleges. We have 4-year, the more research-based, where you can get your bachelor's or advanced degrees. And then we also work with our occupational schools and with our private institutions. So we've got the whole gamut. So we want to make sure that students make sure that they can afford college. So that's a big focus for us right now, because if you can't afford it, then that limits your opportunities. And we have huge equity gaps, and that has to do a lot with who can afford which avenue, which pathway. We are looking at how do we become really agile in terms of what we deliver. And so there's some springing up, maybe not springing up, they've been around for a while, but there are some places where you can have advanced learning kind of in a shared network, a shared workspace. So places like Galvanize or General Assembly, where they can do very focused, depending on what the market is asking, they can do very focused education. And so we want to partner with everyone to make sure that students have every avenue available to them.
Okay, great. And so you said affordability was a focus. Can you say a little bit more about how you're approaching that? What are you thinking are some of the issues to tackle there?
Well, we know that the biggest cost driver for education is the salaries of our professors and the labs and very fixed costs that they have. And so what can we do to make sure that students access as much of the financial aid as they can get? So I'm putting in a plug for a FAFSA. Please complete your FAFSA, because that we are leaving as a state. We're only completing about 48% of our students actually fill out the FAFSA and get the federal dollars. So we're leaving millions of dollars on the table that can go toward things like tuition, and not just tuition. It can go toward those fees. It can go toward books. It can go toward all of those other things that really add to the cost of the higher education. So please complete FAFSA. Then we also have many opportunities in Colorado for matching dollars. So we have the College Opportunity Scholarship Initiative. It's called COSI, and COSI asks the communities, the counties, to put some money up for the students in their county to go to college, and then we as a state, we match those dollars 1 for 1. So there are many counties that are taking great advantage of that and are able to then send kids to college. We have this year, the governor has invested a huge amount into higher education, about $121 million, on the condition that the universities hold tuition flat. And so that will be a cost saving for students this year. And so we're really making a huge investment into higher ed for that purpose, to say, okay, what can we do to make it more affordable, contain some costs, and make it open for everyone?
Okay, great. Thank you. And so, Angie, as you mentioned, you're on the supply side.
Yes.
Betsy, you're more on the demand side, working with the companies. Can you share with us a few of the key initiatives within OEDIT this year?
Yes, sure. Well, one is, the governor, wants to continue to advance those parts of the state that have not seen the kind of economic growth that we've seen on the Front Range. So we're going to be continuing our efforts for rural economic development. And some of that is tied to new economic development activities, for instance, the hemp industry with changes in the federal law regarding hemp. I think it provides new opportunities for growers, for manufacturers of this new industry. And so we're working to develop that industry here in Colorado and removing some of the barriers that we have for exporting products such as hemp. Another one I want to mention is employee ownership. We're really focused on helping companies share the wealth with their employees, whether that is forming a cooperative, employee stock ownership plan, or help with succession planning for a business where the owner may want to retire and be able to sell that business, for instance, to a group of employees. So standing up a commission that will provide some technical and financial help to these businesses, again, who want to get their employees more involved in the management and ownership of that business.
Okay, great. Thank you, Betsy. And I know sometimes people think employee ownership. Is that related to the size of a company? Is that easier done if you're a small employer with 5, 10 people, or does that apply to really big companies as well?
No, it's smaller companies as well, and and particularly you see with cooperative agreements where you've got, for instance, in the agriculture field, you've got a cooperative agreement where you combine several different operations, under one. You're able to scale your business a little bit better. It's not size of business dependent. It could be a company that's 2 or 3 people. But the research clearly shows that companies that are more willing to get their employees involved, give them a financial stake in that company, those companies tend to do better.
Okay, great. I know that one of our former CWDC chairs, Jay Hardy with Brinkman Partners, they went through a transition to an employee ownership model, and it was really successful for that company. Yes. So, Joe, I'm going to you for a few minutes. What are some of the key initiatives that CDLE is focused on this year?
I think we have a lot of work to do with Governor Polis's bold agenda, and so one of those is making sure that all Coloradans have the opportunity to prosper with the economic vitality we've had in the state. And so really looking at those populations that have not been able to benefit from the economic environment in Colorado. So really focusing in on really, what are our mature workers that are either at the end of their career or having to work because they can't afford retirement. And so how can we encourage them or make it more available for them to stay and be relevant in their industries, or move them into encore careers where they can have income coming into their home. So looking at changing the narrative on how we view mature workers and how we can use their assets and skills to complement what needs to be done in business and industry. Looking at justice involved individuals, how can we make sure that people that are leaving our institutions have employment and pathways, and are thinking about how we keep them out of prisons and be successful community contributors rather than recidivism going back into those situations. Our at-risk youth populations, we know in Colorado we're not graduating our minority youth, and so specifically Hispanic males, Black males, how can we make sure that the education is valuable to them and that they're not only completing high school, but they have strategic career paths that lead them into livable wage careers? And so really focusing on how we can look at underrepresented populations and give them, first of all, awareness and then opportunities so that they can be part of the Colorado success story.
So as you can tell, Alex, this group really thinks about the small issues and only tackles the easy stuff.
Yes.
It's exciting to hear about what's going on in the initiatives. And for our listeners who are in a position to hire people, you all know that hiring is an absolutely critical decision. And it's been so great to be working with the three of you really since January when you all came in. You're each new to your roles here. And it was really interesting to see the way that Governor Polis went about structuring his cabinet and had open job postings and really put an emphasis on finding qualified people who really know their stuff. And so it's been great to see that with each of you. And so you bring a wealth of expertise to your positions, but I'm curious about what has surprised each of you about your agency. What was maybe something you expected that you haven't seen? Joe, we'll just start with you.
So probably, coming into it, I have been in the public workforce system for the majority of my career. And so I felt very confident with the workforce development, the human capital development side of labor and employment. Really, the very intricate system of our workers' comp system, our division of labor standards and statistics. Many of you know right off the bat with Governor Polis, myself, we walked into the Denver Public Schools and the teachers' union strike that really consumed us for the first probably 5 to 6 weeks of our administration. And so I learned a lot about labor relations and the role that the department has in making sure that in the public interest, some things actually have to work. And so, again, dealing with fair pay for fair work. The other surprise to me probably was within the Department of Labor, we have oil and public safety. And so think about employment, labor and employment, learning how that division fits into the work we do and really trying to keep our workers safe and our environment safe. And so really dealing with regulations of some of our systems, but also underground petroleum storage falls under our department. So I'm learning a lot about that.
Okay, great.
That must have been a big surprise.
All right.
Oh my God.
Angie, what about you?
Yes.
What's been surprising about higher education?
So for me, I have a career in education. So some of the bigger issues have been there for such a long time in terms of access and affordability and completion, making sure that when students enter, they also get that degree. So those have been kind of issues that are they've been around forever. But what really surprised me for the state of Colorado is the severity of our equity gaps. So right now, we're saying that business is asking for about 74% of workers have credentials, some kind of a degree or certificates, or that they are prepared, and that way they have those competencies. And the state average right now is only at about 56-57%. So that's a huge gap just for the state. Well, now if you parse that data down to our underrepresented students, only 29% of Hispanic students are credentialed. Only 29% of Native Americans, about 39 to 40% of African Americans. And that's a huge gap. So already they're in a position where they will not be able to compete for those top jobs. And in fact, for the top jobs, it's 93% are credentialed. So what jobs will they be able to compete for if they don't have the credentials that are necessary? So that was a huge surprise, and of course that is now a huge focus, and it has been, I know, for the department, but now it's an even more passionate focus for me to say, how can we close and erase those equity gaps?
Right. So oftentimes there's stats thrown out about Colorado being one of the most educated states and a high percentage of people with master's and professional degrees, but when you peel back the layers, there's a lot of interesting detail there.
Yes, and to that stat, because this the other big surprise is how data-driven we are at the department. We have brilliant researchers, and we are doing tons and tons of research, and especially homegrown. And so we have those high numbers, but those are mostly people who are moving into Colorado. They're not our homegrown folks. Our homegrown folks, we see this huge equity gap.
Okay, great, gotcha. Betsy, what surprised you about OEDIT?
Yes, I'll have to say I was really pleasantly surprised about the quality and the talent, really, of the staff that we have in place here at OEDIT. I've got 2 people who speak Mandarin, several former Peace Corps volunteers, lots of folks who have already owned their own businesses. Happy to say most of them are from Colorado. Some of them left but have come back because they love the state, and they're really passionate about what they do. So that's been really wonderful for me to be able to lead this group of very talented people. But I also I'm excited about really the depth and breadth of the programs that OEDIT is involved in. For instance, I oversee the tourism industry, and we get 84 million tourists to Colorado every year. Our creative industries and the arts, our film program for Colorado is here. Global business development, which includes, getting foreign direct investment to our Colorado companies, and also export assistance for our companies that want to export their products overseas. And we get involved in that. The various incentive programs that we have available for businesses, from Rural Jumpstart in rural Colorado, our advanced industry grant, and our job growth incentive tax credit. So all of these things are run out of our office. And finally, the business support we provide to small businesses around the state through our 15 small business development centers. And really, there are boots on the ground to help people who want to start their business or grow their business to get that free technical assistance. And we provided, served about 10,000 small business owners last year through those small business development centers.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. That is impressive.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know what more you guys are excited about in the following year, but unfortunately we have to take a quick break here on Connect and Collaborate. But this has been a fascinating conversation so far. Like I said, you always bring me amazing people.
We do what we can.
We'll be right back with Lee Wheeler-Berliner, Director of the Colorado Workforce Development Council Center, Joe Barela, Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, Angie Paccione. Is that right? Paccione.
There you go.
Angie Paccione,
There you go.
Colorado Department of Higher Education, and Betsy Markey joining us by phone, Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade. We'll be right back. Be sure to stay with us, like and subscribe to our YouTube page while you're here, and we'll be right back.
All right.
Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I have some exciting guests in studio with me. Lee Wheeler-Berliner, Director of the Colorado Workforce Development Council, once again, our monthly show, and this is a fascinating show. We have some great guests. Again, Joe Barela, Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, CDLE, as we so lovingly like to use our acronyms in this room. Angie Paccione, yes, and Colorado Department of Higher Education, CO Higher Ed, as I like to say, and Betsy Markey joining us by phone, Colorado OEDIT, Office of Economic Development and International Trade. So welcome back to the conversation, and I like that we're piecing together economic development, labor and employment, and higher education. They cannot work without each other, quite clearly, as we're seeing today.
Absolutely, yes. So thank you, everybody, for being here. It's great to have you with us. In the first segment, we really understood kind of what your organizations are focused on and what are some of the opportunities ahead. And I think, I jokingly said you all tackle the easy problems, but there's definitely things to focus on in the state of Colorado and some big, hairy challenges that we're trying to go after and solve. And one of the things we'll get into in this segment is that by no means do we believe government can solve all the problems alone. We believe there have to be strong partnerships with the private sector, with nonprofit organizations, with the community. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Angie, you had started to talk about some of the challenges and the equity gap. Could you say a little bit more? What are some of the challenges we face in ensuring that we have the right workforce that we need here in the state of Colorado? Let's start with you.
Yeah, so as you know, there's been a huge emphasis on the STEM careers, right? Those careers that require those technical mastery and the sciences and maths. And oftentimes, people, when I was going to college, you could major in something that was, some people would call maybe the soft skills, and you could still find some good jobs when you left. But really now, like I said, 93% of those top jobs require some very high credentials. And so how do we make sure that students are entering those pathways early, and how do we make sure that they complete those pathways so that they do earn those credentials? That's probably the biggest one for us. In addition is the agility, because as we know, the workforce changes so much, and the business demands change so rapidly. And when you are in a 4-year program, you want to make sure that you're also the content that you're getting is relevant and that you're going to be able to apply it right away. That's for us, and may lead to one of your next questions, but for us it's really important that we are able to have our students enter into apprenticeships and internships throughout their academic career so that they can get a sense of what's out there and that they can be prepared for the workplace when they leave. For the last 12 years, I've been working in industry, and I've been working with folks who talk about how the new hires coming out of college need remediation. We've used to focus that remediation was the colleges remediating high school kids coming into college who needed remediation, but it's also on the other side of that pipeline as well. And so we want to make sure that the students are academically prepared, that they have the practical application of the academics so that they can really enter the workforce ready to earn and to learn and to grow.
Okay, great. Thank you. Joe, from your perspective, what are some of the challenges we face in ensuring we have the workforce we need?
I think one of the biggest challenges is we just really haven't figured out a system that hits every potential worker with the options they have in front of them. I think, we grew up in a society that culturally there was a method you follow from, elementary school, high school, then you go to college, and then you have a job for life. That has changed, and I think we haven't communicated to parents and even to young people that there are different modalities on how you can reach a really good career and a well-paying career. And so some kids will continue on that pathway, but we need to make sure that people know that there are other ways to get there with a credential, a stackable credential, a portable credential that's a little bit shorter than a 4-year investment. It could be an internship, apprenticeship program. It could be a community college associate's degree that puts you in a learn-earn model so that you're learning money along the way, and there's not such a steep investment at the beginning, and that eventually maybe a 4-year degree or an advanced degree is required to move within that career path, but it doesn't have to happen all at once. I think a lot of people just say, okay, you finished this part of your education, the next step is this. and we train and pray that our students end up with a degree that will lead to a job. Well, we don't live in that world anymore, and so we need to develop the tools and make sure that coaching and career navigation is available at an early age so that people can put some thought into exploration, ideation, and then land on something that after they've looked at all the options and feel really comfortable on the decision that they've made to invest in their skills that are related to the business and industry in their communities or in their state. Because we have so many people leaving with debt that are going into non-related industries, low-skilled occupations. And a study just came out last year that you will never make up the wage loss if you are underemployed from your first job. And so it's really important for us to make sure that kids that are trained in programs get placed in those programs so that they can start a career path that has a trajectory to lead to better outcomes for them in wages, but also a career path.
Little confused. Just going to clarify for myself here. So you want to make sure that they're not underemployed when they first start out because they're missing out on wages.
Right.
Are you running into issues then with companies that are saying that you need 3 years experience before you can come here? So if I'm graduating from college but didn't do any internships, perhaps.
Well, and I think that's the problem. That what we need to move is that we put a heavy emphasis. Yes, the credentialing and the piece of paper is important, but what does it mean? And so when I leave an education experience, I know the skill sets that I'm leaving with and I'm competent in, and they match and align with what an employer is hiring. But we have to do work on the employer side of the fence because they have put up proxies and have for years to say, when I hire someone with a 4-year degree, I don't have to worry about anything because I'm getting someone that can do the job. Well, that doesn't necessarily isn't so anymore. So yes, you may need a 4-year degree, but what are the skill sets that you need in this specific occupation? Employers are aware of it. They recruit, they hire, they assess, and they get better matched workers. And so it helps them with the cost of recruitment. Retention is improved, and then they can build their pipelines with good candidates that can move into the next leadership levels or management levels of their company. So it really does work when you have both sides of the supply and demand side looking at skills and competencies, and that's what's important.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure. Great. Thanks. And so, Betsy, going to you, you mentioned that part of your role is around attracting new employers to Colorado. And I'm sure if a company is considering a state, they're interested in the talent available here. What are some of the challenges you believe we face in ensuring we have the workforce we need?
Right. Yes, part of our job is attracting new businesses to the state that are going to be providing good paying jobs, and also growing our existing businesses here in Colorado. And, when you're looking at attracting a company here, there's a couple of things that are critical, of course. What's the education system like? What's the school district like for families, coming in or moving to another location within Colorado? What does healthcare look like? Is there affordable housing? But really, number one out of all of those is do we have the workforce available here to fill those jobs? And so that continues to be a challenge. And that home, as Angie mentioned too, that homegrown workforce, people who have graduated from high school, technical school, or college here in Colorado. So and then the second challenge being really as we come more and more, not just in Colorado but around the world, more of a knowledge-based global economy. We want to make sure that we're preparing our students for those jobs in the advanced industries, manufacturing, cybersecurity, high tech, fintech. And so these are jobs that we need to be, again, one of the reasons we're all working together is okay, industry saying we need these jobs. This is a growth area. For instance, cybersecurity is a big growth area in the Colorado Springs area. And where are we getting that workforce?
And Betsy, how is your agency kind of helping to address those challenges? What are some of the things you guys are looking at?
Well, one of the things that we do is really in helping with some grant programs that we have. Again, I mentioned earlier, bringing that business perspective as we talk to businesses who might be having problems recruiting in a particular area. How do we work with Joe? How do we work with Angie to make sure that we are putting, we have programs in place or with the, community college system to address some of these shortcomings. One of the things that we do have is we get grant money from the state we've got some Colorado First and then an existing industries grant programs where we try to increase transferable skills that support both the company's economic competitiveness and then also enhance a worker's resume with long-term employment opportunities. And then our Colorado First grants are for companies that are relocating or expanding in Colorado, and we provide those funds only to net new hires. So that's one way that we're trying to address to some of the training support that we were able to provide.
Okay, great. And I think there's a lot of information available on your websites, I'm sure. We'll get those links shared out so employers know where to go to access that.
One thing I wanted to add to that is the way that the CDHE operates with OEDIT is we have, Colorado is a very unique state in that we have very unique regional economic needs. And so we have Colorado Mountain College that's really servicing the economic needs in our mountain and ski communities. And we have so many rural schools that address different kinds of needs, and then of course we have our main cities up along the I-25, and so we have very different economic needs, and so we have to make sure that our schools can prepare their students for those very specific regional needs as well. So our community colleges do a great job at doing that. We have some smaller regional four-year colleges as well that really are very they're a perfect match for their region. So.
Okay, great. Joe, what would you add? What are your agency doing to really dig in and address some of these issues?
I think that we are working in partnership, and I can't stress enough how throughout my career I've been so engaged in talent development is economic development, and education plays the role in filling the gap and really looking at the training, upskilling, and education that creates a skilled workforce. And so we have to work so closely together because we have seen for many years now that when we are looking at retention and recruitment of business to Colorado, they do bring up workforce and availability of a skilled workforce as their first, second, or third criteria for coming into a new location or remaining in a new location. I think we have a tremendous opportunity at the Department of Labor and Employment to get out in front of the future of work. And so, a lot of people see that as digitalization and AI, but it looks at what will work be in the future. And so we have an economy in Colorado that supports entrepreneurialism and self-startups. And so how do we as a department support people that choose that as a viable career? And how do we make sure that they're protected? How do we make sure that it's an environment where creativity gets to flourish and there's potential for livability and careers in those industries? And so we have sector initiatives throughout the state that really focus on what Angie was talking to. What is the business environment in our community? We don't want to work with just one company. We want to find out the industry and work with all the companies in the industry so that we can start building sustainable upskilling and training mechanisms through our education system to support those industries so that they grow. And then Betsy has work in OEDIT to bring in new companies or can announce new companies to support that industry. So it's all connected. And so I think that's the role that, in the vision that we can bring with not only government entities, but our business partners on the council to really look at that at a high level and then let the funding and the programs we have spread out throughout the state support that vision.
Okay, great. So definitely a lot of hefty collaboration between your three agencies and across all aspects of government and with local government as well. Can you say a little bit more about the role of private businesses? You talked about the sector initiatives. What does that look like with them?
I think it's bringing them to the table and asking them how can we help them solve their pain points. Not us assuming there's a pain point and then building programs and say, well, no one asked us. And so they're critical of their feedback and their involvement in driving what we do as government. I also think that a lot of the companies we work with have foundations, and more because government funding is shrinking, we need to work with those foundations to say, how can we turn this into a public-private partnership and use private resources to complement what government resources are doing. And you're seeing more big companies get into the field of human capital development and how important skilled workforce is to their bottom line. And so we need to embrace that, engage that, and figure out ways to work with private foundations and private companies to do the work we do.
Right. And on a national level, there was an announcement by JP Morgan Chase recently of a really big investment in talent.
Yep.
So, great example.
That's great. I think for us, it's really important that we develop all of these apprenticeships models, and we have over 450 apprentice programs already in the state. What we found in terms of the data is that 9 out of 10 apprentices actually are employed by that company after their apprenticeship,
Wow.
and the average starting salary is $60,000. That's a really good starting salary.
Yeah.
So if we can really build out and make that, I would love to see that as part of every single academic program, that you are spending some time with the companies for which you are being prepared. I have seen that literally all over Europe. There's fantastic models of apprenticeship programs in different forms. We also work with CareerWise. Of course, they do great youth apprenticeships. Right now, they're at about 100 students, but they want to grow to 20,000 students in the next 10 years. And so when these students from the high school level, when they're doing apprenticeships, they can be more targeted and focused in what the academic program that they want to pursue, whether it's 2 or 4 years. But when if you're at a 4-year institution, why should we have to wait for 4 years before we enter the workforce? We can actually blend some of that learning and earning right now. And so that's one way that I think a lot of the companies can say, what are the positions? Where are you recruiting already? Right? Every company has a recruiter, and they go to college campuses, and they're recruiting seniors who are graduating. Come earlier.
Yeah.
Come to the college earlier. Get your recruiting done when they're a sophomore and say, here's what I need from you. Here are the competencies and the skills that we're going to need, so that they can be really focused and they can see that their education is going to be meaningful and relevant for their future economic earnings.
Absolutely. Those are great points. And Alex, you may recall last fall on this show, we talked about the introduction of our business engagement guide that's linked and published on the CWDC website. And that has a host of information about how businesses can lead by opening your doors.
Yes.
And what is the distinction between an apprentice and an intern? How do you set up those programs? And if any company wants to take a look at that guide, or if you want more details or information, we're happy to come and sit down with you to meet with your leadership team, talk about how these models can work for your specific industry.
Absolutely.
Betsy, in terms of your role, how do you see that collaboration working with private industry to really solve some of these big challenges?
Sure. Well, I think really our approach is twofold. We listen to employers and what are they looking for in talent. We've done targeted, for instance, recruiting campaigns on LinkedIn as part of our marketing outreach. For example, we did a targeted tech recruiting campaign in the Bay Area last year for tech companies to come here. So really, we're really looking to make sure that we have for these Colorado companies that are here or moving in the talented workforce for now and in the future. And as I guess one success we've seen in the area of talent development through, as I mentioned, some of the grants we have. For example, RK Mechanical right here in Denver has used one of the Colorado First grants to help their staff receive training, and they got training in pipe fitting and welding and other trade and technical skills. And we just think these kinds of opportunities for companies are really critical. And providing assistance in order to remain competitive within their industry and to adapt to new technology.
Okay, great. So this has been a great conversation, and as we're coming to the end, I'll give you each just 1 to 2 minutes for some final thoughts. And the question I'll ask is, what do you wish businesses knew about your agency that they might not, or what is another parting thought you want to leave? Joe, I'll start with you. What do you wish businesses knew?
I wish businesses knew that we could help them with workforce planning prior to usually a critical need or a dislocation of workers. And so I think a lot of what the Department of Labor, through our partners in local communities, our local workforce boards and the Colorado Workforce Centers, is we can be used as a resource to help with critical talent shortages, but we also could do things to say, as your business model changes, as your need for skilled workers changes, if you would work with your business services teams in our Colorado Workforce Centers, they can help you through that process with our partners, such as education, and maybe upskill a cohort of incumbent workers before you're considering a layoff or dislocation and a change in your business model. So I think of us when you're doing workforce planning, not when you have already decided to move in a direction where you're either moving out of Colorado or you're downsizing. There's things that we may possibly do that you may change your mind. So I think we're a resource for workforce planning that a lot of companies, especially small and medium-sized companies, could use it. And it's a public service that there's no cost. And so I think that's critical. I also think they could use us to help with their recruitment. A lot of times our employers don't know that what does the landscape look like in my community as far as these critical positions that I'm having workforce shortages on. They can use our business services teams to help look at, here are what competitors are hiring and the wages they're hiring for that position. This is why you're not able to retain or attract or retain talent. You need to be more competitive. And that's labor market information we can share with them when they start thinking about a growth pattern that they're looking at. I do think that we also can look at pipeline issues, and so anticipated need as you're changing. If you're looking at automation, what is the skills that in your workers that you need 1 year out, 2 year out, so that we can go back and work with our learning institutions to say, we need to change the program, and there's a need for 250 technicians that do this, or workers that have this credential. And so we can help prepare as they anticipate changes in their business model or their growth patterns. I also think that we can help them also with when there's wage loss, and so look at unemployment insurance, and so that they know how to use that in their workforce planning. Workers' comp in Colorado, workers' comp falls under the Department of Labor and Employment. So when there's wage loss because of workplace injury, definitely the Department of Labor can help them with that. The most I didn't mention, but I need to, is under the Department of Labor is the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and so we do have several people that are differently abled in Colorado that are struggling with employment and ongoing full-time or part-time employment, and so we would love the business community to look at that and change the narrative, especially with technology, on how they can use differently abled individuals in their workforce, and we can help with that.
Great, thanks so much. Betsy, what is your one thought you wish businesses knew?
Okay, well, one thing I want to make sure that people know about, because I think it's a great opportunity that many are not familiar with, and it's called, well, aptly named Opportunity Zones. And this is it's a new opportunity that came out of the 2017 tax reform legislation in Congress. And basically what it does, it provides capital gains relief and incentives for businesses, investors who want to invest in distressed or rural parts of the state. So in Colorado, we have 126 designated opportunity zones, and we're really pushing them as a way for business development, particularly in some of the more rural parts of the state. And I don't think people know that we're really trying to get the word out. We have a dedicated opportunity zone manager now who's really trying to link up these communities that are struggling with economic development with some investors who might want to fund the opportunity zone projects that they have available. We've been doing some pitch events where we were putting investors and economic developers in the same room, to pitch their project, and those have been successful. And we also offer grants to support this economic modeling and some prospective development.
Okay.
But I would say just overall, I wish that people knew that we have literally hundreds of free and low-cost programs, incentives, and classes to support their business success, from our small business development classes to our rural technical technical assistance programs. We're here to help all companies succeed. And
Okay.
if anyone needs additional information, they can just go to choosecolorado.com.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Betsy.
I'll
Angie,
be
20
real quick.
seconds.
Yes, I'll be real quick. Here's what they should know. We are, it's about preparation. We prepare the workforce. It's about innovation, and it's about collaboration. So you can collaborate with our professors for new product development, commercialization of those products. So it's very robust. So come to the universities, come to our community colleges. Let us help you. Right? Help us help you.
I like that.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. It has been a pleasure having you on. Once again, be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page. Find this podcast more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. You will find all of the information we provided today in the description below. So be sure to click on that link. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.